you're new here, I'm Sandy. If you're joining me again, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. A little bit of housekeeping. I have a budgie. His name is Cooper Petey. He sings. If you hear him, that's what that is. I also have a dog named Baxter. He's asleep right now, taking his evening nap. But if you hear little tap-tap-tapas from his little paws, that's what that is. So today I'm going to talk about something I'm constantly asked. I don't mind being constantly asked because I think it's a really interesting topic. And I get asked this not just because I put myself out there as a fiber artist, but also like if I'm just talking to people at a bar or something, people always want to know if they wanted to start, what should they start with? Knitting or crochet? And it's a valid question because they seem similar, but also completely different. Like most annoying things. So let's start with my biases. I have been knitting for over 20 years. I love knitting. I can knit without looking at it. Knitting for me is just second nature. It's almost a passive behavior instead of an active one at this point. Crochet, I came to a little bit after I started knitting and it never really stuck. It wasn't until lockdowns that I did a kind of learn to crochet class that I really started to get the hang of it. So yeah, that's where I come from. I do maybe veer on the side of knitting a little bit just because I've been doing it so long and I'm better at it. Yeah, so the main differences between crochet and knitting. Knitting looks like this. Knitting is made up of two basic stitches. You keep your stitches active or live on two needles and you basically go back and forth working each stitch at a time. That's what it looks like. Crochet is made using a hook and you make almost knots. And these different types of 6 basic stitches or knots mean that you really only are working one live stitch at a time. So yes, that's what it looks like. Knitting can be replicated by machine. The top I'm wearing right now is knit. Underwear tends to be knit. Socks tend to be a knit, even though they don't look like something that you'd make with knitting needles. It's got these stitches on a smaller scale. Crochet cannot be done by machine. I mention this partly because if you're paying €4 for a crochet top, somebody isn't getting paid enough. So, which is easier? This is where I get a little prickly, because people swear up and down knitting is easier. People swear up and down crochet is easier. For me, knitting is easier. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I truly believe that which is easier shouldn't be a factor because it's going to be easier whatever you put your time into doing. If you think, oh, I can pick it up and just be immediately excellent. No, this is a skill. It's a craft. It takes time to learn. It takes time to master. So honestly, and it could be anything too. Maybe I'm better at knitting because I had my grandmother teaching me how to do it over my shoulder, whereas crochet I had to learn by video. You know, there are a million and two things. Honestly, I just don't think it's a big factor. Whatever one you want to be easier and you want to practice and you want to pursue is going to be the easier one. Now, there is a question of the yarn world. And I'm sort of mentioning it just in case you do decide to want to go for crochet. There are a few little like crochet things, but the yarn world is a big one. People say, and this does kind of factor into where it's easier, where people think knitting is easier, in my opinion. There's a huge subset of people that say that the entire yarn world is completely biased against crochet. I want so badly to sit here and tell you that's not true. I've seen it. I worked at a yarn shop for a little bit, and at one point, I was the only one who had ever crocheted. And at one point, one of the women told me, no matter the pattern, no matter what the ball band says, no matter the person's previous crocheting experience, in one case, a woman who had been doing it for 10 years, you should always sell people a size bigger crochet hook because of the loops. Which is honestly just really dumb advice. So, you know, I've seen it happen, and a lot of the advice was questionable at best. What I experienced there at worst. So, you know, imagine if that person didn't have 10 years of experience and they were going in trying to learn a craft from somebody that had never done it. Going to your local yarn store, especially when I was working at, was generally considered one of the better ones. And it's a great place to start, but if you are looking to do crochet, try to find somebody who crochets. And I think that's becoming more common too, because crochet is becoming really trendy. Like the youths, the younger set, not that old, but yet, you know, they tend to be more like, it's trendy, people want to crochet more. So hopefully that's changing. And I really do hope it's changing, because I think crochet deserves a lot of respect that it doesn't get. There are some other weird factors, and these, I think they're going to sound a little more against crochet, because it's just what I hear a lot. Why I think crochet was difficult to stick to for me was because there's two systems. Knitting, generally the most difference you get is, I've heard like a yarn over be a yarn forward, and they're kind of, I mean, I don't think there's any difference. I do them the same and my stuff always turns out fine. But realistically, there aren't many differences English-speaking country to other English-speaking country. Crochet has two terms. There's a set of UK terms and a set of US terms. A single crochet in US terms is a double crochet in UK terms, but there's a different stitch called a double crochet, which in the US terms, which is a treble crochet in UK terms. I think where I got messed up was I was trying to do something, and I had learned US terms because I was living in Canada, and I think I was doing something in UK terms, and I think that's where the disparity came for me. And I think that's where I got screwed up, to be honest. And then I just said, like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is too hard. So yeah, that's something to be considerate of, because if you're like me and you weren't, and the internet was not as much of a thing back then. It was like a thing, but it was like, I wasn't about to go clicking on random sites that I Googled, because we all thought the internet would kill us. Yeah, so other weird factors. People say crochet uses more yarn than knitting. I've found this generally to be true. I have more of this yarn left over than I do this one, so, but people swear up and down it's not. I think people, another big one, is crochet goes faster. I think to an extent. I mean, for me, I have to look everything up, so maybe not, but when you get going, I mean, this stitch, each stitch here is a little bit bigger than these ones. So I think there is some truth to that, but then I think if you get good at crochet, you're not good at knitting, obviously. Again, it's just what when you practice more. One of the weirdest ones I've ever heard is some people say crochet makes a yarn feel rough, and I'm holding both of these ones. They both feel excellent. Now, to be fair, this is cotton, but yeah. What it comes down to is any sort of fiber craft falls into a category of things I call the Ask 10 People, Get 11 Answers category. And I think part of that is that it's so deeply personal. When you make something that takes this long and you're putting this much love into it, it's going to elicit very big reactions. And I think sometimes those reactions can be taken by people who maybe aren't as able to process things as personal attacks, especially in the moment. And then, you know, you go home, you think, why did I say that? Why did I do that? But yeah, I think it does have a tendency to come across that way. So I think that's why a lot of these debates become very heavy-handed and very hot when they are just not that relevant. Relevant, but, you know, like, if you're somebody who wants to put somebody down for crocheting, or you want to think somebody's snobby because they knit, like, that's not the issue here. So which should you start with? I can't tell you, but I've devised a system of how you can figure it out for yourself. So I am a project knitter and crocheter, to be fair. I will learn anything and do anything if it gets me the project I want. Very catalog. For me, flipping through patterns is like shopping, you know? Shopping with a kick. So, no, I wish that had a kick. So, I think the best way to determine what you should do first is there's one site that is like the mecca of knitting and crochet patterns. It's got, I would say, like, I mean, it's not everything, but like there's a lot. If you go to Ravelry.com and go to the hot right now, I give directions on how to do it in the blog post. And set the filter for crochet and knitting. If you don't want to use Ravelry because you don't want to make an account or whatever, or I've heard there can be some like weird seizure issues with the new layout, but I'm not sure what's going on with that. Pinterest works. Go to Pinterest, search knitting crochet patterns. If you search knitting and crochet patterns, it doesn't give as like nice mixed results. So take a survey of 10 to 15 patterns that you really love, things that you want the finished project of, and see which ones are knit, which one's crochet. Whichever one you have more of, maybe that's a craft you should start with. But fear not if they're pretty equal, because in my experience, generally people, like, you start with knitting, then you do crochet, or you start with crochet, then you do knitting, then you like yarn dye, then you spin, then like Tunisian crochet, then the super valid hobby of looking up farms. And if there's a room that fits a floor loom, like, why not? Like, this is such a rabbit hole that you fall into, and more people are learning both. So remember, there's always room to learn more. I hope this helped. I feel like I've probably just made people more confused, but no, literally, like, that's the answer. It's just find what you like. But again, if you go the crochet route, just like keep some things in mind, because it drives me nuts, and I just, fair warning. But yeah, so I hope I helped even a little. And yeah, let me know if you're starting with one or if you do both, and what your advice would be. Because honestly, like, the more opinions, the more takes we have on it, the better we can kind of do a consensus. Yeah, so thanks so much, and I hope I'll see you guys later. Bye!